Hi, welcome back. I have something really exciting for us today. I got the opportunity to talk with Bruce Miller, creator of The Handmaid's Tale. He was so incredibly generous with his time. He gave me answers far better than my questions. We got to talk about his mindset and his goals for adapting this book into a television series. And he gave me a ton of insights into how he utilized the epilogue in this adaptation and in the series finale. He explained his intentions with June and Luke and their last scene, as well as Nick and his last scene. And I got a ton of insight as to how he utilized Yvonne as a presence in order to flesh out and humanize Serena as a character. And he gave me way more information on Hannah and the Testaments than I was expecting. So sit back and enjoy this audio only interview. Went back to my podcast roots for this one. Again, Mr. Miller, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and talk with me. Your answers are going to be incredibly helpful as we continue to dissect this series all summer long. Welcome back, Bruce Miller, creator and executive producer of The Handmaid's Tale. Bruce, thank you so much, first of all, for taking the time to sit down with me. I am so excited for this opportunity and the privilege to hear your thoughts about the show that you did.
I'm happy to be here. I mean, it's nice to talk to you and your listeners, viewers. What do we say? Subscribers.
Yeah, subscribers, resistors. You gave them the name the
Resistors. Yeah.
resistors in the live chat, and I appreciate that. So the resistors. So thank you for coming on. Now, I want to start off. It's kind of a lofty question. And so I'm sorry for starting off with something so large. We wouldn't have a podcast if I didn't think that what you were doing, we started in season 3, and I fell in love with season 2. And I think I've had faith that this show would be brought to a really satisfying conclusion, based on this source material of this book that was so perennially important. And you took this adaptation of this book, and there's so rarely times when adaptations fulfill and exceed what the source material has done. And
Tell
I
me
feel
about it. Yeah.
like now that we've seen this completed series, that this 100% that this is what you have done is expanded upon the source material and brought it to the screen in a way that really, I'm just so I think it'll be a masterclass for adaptations for forever to come. I think it's just gonna be such a wonderful example of how this is done. I've heard several times over the last 6 seasons of different interviews that you were saying, that you felt you were the best person to do this adaptation, and this is why you pitched it and you wanted to have this in your hands. And I would just like to say that after 6 seasons, I agree that you were the best person, and I really love everything that you did, and we'll get into all the details of it.
I was the
But
best woman for the job.
you were the best woman for the job. You surrounded yourself with all the right people. You did wonderful, Mr. Miller. I want to know how you feel about your completed series now that you went in with an idea, and now that it's done and it's finished and you've made the hat. How do you feel about what you've completed?
Thanks for having me. It's so nice to be here. I think overall, how do I feel about it? I would say it's better than I could possibly have hoped. And I think I went into it very much as you were saying, as a fan of the book, that I didn't want it ruined. I would go with something I could ignore. It would be okay for me to have a Handmaid's Tale movie that I didn't really like and I never really thought about. That's
Fair.
fine.
Yeah.
If you didn't go out of your way to look at it. But once you start kind of, I mean, the way I was thinking of it is making it a real TV show where it went on and on and on and went past by the story that was in the book,
Right.
and then it kept continuing on and building the world up. So, with that in mind, I didn't want to mess it up. So I really went in with the feeling of what I want is something that really, if it's something that just pulls more people to the book. I love the book. I have no,
Yeah.
and I felt like in the end I was the best person to adapt it. As you said, I agree, mostly because I had seen others people's versions of what they wanted to do with it, um, and it pushed me at the very beginning. I got some good lessons from looking at very smart people try to adapt it or make decisions about how much to stick to the book.
Yeah.
So I think the rule of adaptation that I really proved to myself
Mhm.
is honestly the most useless one for you, which is pick the right book. I mean, good God. I mean,
But
it's
seriously.
right, exactly. So it's like, oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
great.
Right.
You know what the secret to marriage is? Marry the right person. It's like, oh, okay,
100%.
thank you. That's
Yes.
hugely helpful. So I
Yeah.
think that's so. The source. I think one of the things is I don't feel like I expanded on the source material, I felt I like excavated the source material.
That's a great way to put it. Okay.
So sometimes, people talk about what I do and they talk about the creative process, and I always think, well, in the best of worlds, it almost is never you're never creating anything. You're just digging around in the world that you established in the pilot or the first few scenes. You know,
Right.
whether this is after that moment or before that moment or whatever, you're digging around and you want things to be so interesting. You want June's face to be what happens in that first scene is so interesting. It keeps you going for a long, long time. You
Yep.
want so what you don't want to be doing is adding things. So in some ways, when people say it feels grounded in our world,
Yeah.
the reason it feels grounded in our world is we went in saying change as little as possible. Gilead would change nothing unless they wanted to. I mean,
Right.
they're not really forced to by anybody. They're the forcers. So they're
Yep.
changing things so that it's everything the way they want to. So it doesn't have to be any certain way. And so don't say, oh, it can't have this and it can't have this because of this law. Just say, okay, well, the men probably want iPads, so there's probably iPads. So if there's iPads, there's probably
Yep.
chargers somewhere. You can
Yep. Yep.
extrapolate out those
Yep.
kinds of very practical things. Don't be hung up on rules, and then it feels much more grounded, because if you say everything else should be super grounded except the weirdo costumes and the weirdo
Mm.
talking and the
Yeah.
weirdo sex stuff and the
Yep.
weirdo, yeah, there's so much weird. You're like, okay, so if the clothes June is wearing in the flashbacks and her earrings make you feel
Yeah.
like that's a real person,
Right.
that makes all the other stuff okay. And people talk about how grounded the show is. It's actually the opposite. The show is so untethered that the
Uh-huh.
grounded moments are so apparent and strong because we made
Right.
them so strong. And Lizzie is so naturalistic that it kind of counteracts. The show doesn't float away, on
Oh,
white fairy wings and
yeah.
with images and songs and all that kind of stuff of her crazy life in Gilead, because it's bound by a couple of moments that tether it to our world so strongly because of OT, because of
Yep.
Samira, because of the
Yep.
production design, because of the wardrobe, because of the makeup, because of the way the other people act around her just normally, that, having background artists who know, oh, in Gilead, you would never, but here I want to make sure I'm touching people because if I'm standing with my girlfriend, I'm holding her hand and all that kind of stuff. All those
Right.
little details add up to a tethering that makes you always like, oh, I'm still in the real world. And that's what makes the show scary. If you're like,
Yes.
oh, this would never happen, then it's a lot less scary. You know,
Right.
the
Right.
more it's only as scary as it is tethered. So I just wanted to say that uh, about I'm very flattered that you say it's as good as the book. In the end, I feel like it's a really good TV show, and that's what I wanted to make. I mean, you really
Mhm.
try to in this day and age, people are going to give you time, and it's a lot of money to make the show, and
Right.
it's a lot of money to subscribe to Hulu and all those things. I really feel like you want it to be an experience that even if you're a big fan of the world, it adds to it. That you really so, and in this case,
That's what you
expanded it
did.
a lot because it was the first kind of visual stuff. So I felt like that was really fun. So that should be kind of worth it. Just and so I've always thought of it as a something nice. It'll be a good companion piece on the shelf next to The Handmaid's Tale and not ruin it
Yeah.
for you, which is always a
100%.
problem.
That's
And
what you
so
did.
first do no harm was really my my goal. But at the beginning you said it's this it was a satisfying conclusion that you brought it, and it's so
It's the
funny that
best.
satisfying is so the every audience has such an expectation towards drama that exists in a certain paradigm that they're so used to, the one from Greek, like 6,000 years ago. You're
Right.
absolutely, oh, that's the protagonist, that's the antagonist, that's their journey, the hero's journey, all the stuff you kind of know in the back of your head. You absolutely assume this kind of thing on this little box is going
Yeah.
to be, it's not just going to end. It's going to be satisfying in some way. The whole world of TV depends on how Marjorie defines satisfying.
And I think I define it differently than other people. I think that's the thing that this series finale has proved to me is that depending on how you watch the show, you satisfying means different things to different people.
And I wasn't trying to satisfy you.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If you say what would be a satisfying ending, I've already lost you to the paradigm. I've already lost you to ye olde dramatic structure. And when I lose you
Right.
to that, you know every single thing that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because you've seen so many dramas,
Mhm.
what's going to happen to this person and that person. So I don't want you to feel like it's a regular drama, because then so at the end, if you feel like, oh, I had 7 things on my bingo card and 4 of them happened and all that kind of stuff, that's
Yep.
not we're ruining your life, Marjorie, by telling you that you're going to come to the end of some story and you're going to feel like, well, this versus this, I kind of feel like that was a successful life, but that's not the way
Right.
life works. It
Right.
ends like it's just Thursday and then it becomes Friday. I don't understand these people who think there's some tallying up moment that exists.
That reminds me, that is, I think, exactly in the same vein as the 2 words that I feel like I keep getting hung up on. I haven't actually done, I'm still working on the um my series finale recap. And part of my problem is that there's just so much because this is the last episode and it's on 6 seasons, and I want to talk to you all about that episode because I feel like there was just so much in even the finale. Forget the penultimate. Just talking about that 10th episode, there was so much. And so I don't understand why people don't see the closure. I think that's the word. It's closure and it's redemption. And both of
It's
those
hard.
things.
Think of it this way, Marjorie.
Mhm.
They don't want it to end anyway. I don't want it to end.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
were not going to feel good about the ending of something you don't want to end. Breaking up with someone who you're in love with, it's no fun, no matter how good the breakup is. No matter how good the dinner is, it doesn't matter. You
I
still broke up. So it's not going to be, you're never going to, I don't want it to end.
But
I
you did
mean,
it so
so
well. You made it end so well in such a way that I think that's what's so cool about it is because I assumed going into this season that for sure when that final end credits rolled that I would instantly want to go to the testaments, that I would want to go read it. That's what we'd be doing in the off season is we're just going to go instantly read that book and talk all about it. I was reading it before the season started. I was already like in that space. And then by the time The Handmaid's Tale ended, what surprised me the most is that all I want to do is go back and sit in this, and I want to go back and rewatch it. Like I think that's such a cool thing that you did, that for the moment this was done, I wanted to go back to episode 1. And very intentionally, like obviously that was the point, but also like I think that gives you, I can go back and watch these 6 seasons with a whole new perspective, understanding that that's where June's mind frame was. It's just this like circular loop that really makes me, you don't leave these characters. I feel like that closure and
that's
that
why.
containment.
That's how you do the breakup. I think you feel like they're going on with their lives. So when you turn off the show, they aren't dying. They're
Yes,
going on, and that's a
right,
good feeling even if you're not with them. And
right,
so you kind of not forgive their lack of progress, because life is always lack of progress. There's always something you
right.
haven't gotten done.
Yes, yep.
If you're all done, you're
It's always
dead.
something
So
next,
there's
otherwise you're
always
dead.
something
Yeah.
next. And so I think that what you want to do is kind of go, oh, this is what this person is doing, and then probably that, and based on, and then this person's
Right,
doing that. So I think what what I like about TV is at the end of every episode, you're like, what happens next,
right.
right? And
Yeah,
I'm not built to write a finale that doesn't have that question. The only thing I do is
right.
write things that have that
What
question.
happens next? Yeah.
I'm not good at I'm terrible at answers. I'm great at
I
questions.
questions. That's fair, because I have so many questions, and that's exactly what this series has always done is open up more questions than answers in a great way. I have a specific question first that I just want, I'm curious if this is where your head was at. The epilogue. So, with the epilogue of the book, how much of that were you considering in this finale when you, like, I know you said that you had an idea of this finale when you started the series. And how much of the epilogue was what was your focus as you brought these characters to this conclusion on this series? Because
Well,
I have a one specific question about the purge that they reference.
yeah.
We've talked about that a lot on this podcast, and it was like kind of this idea of maybe Fred Waterford died in this purge. And so we had talked about what the purge would look like, and then we got to see on the show Fred Waterford's death. But my question is that purge that the epilogue refers to, did we see that? Is that June's Mayday operation of getting rid of all these commanders and
There were
changing into
so many things that could be called the purge. They did this all. This is kind of based on the rise of Nazi Germany. Every 4 months, they killed 25 people.
really okay,
25 commanders, because you want to get rid of, so, and all these generals and all this kind of stuff. So, and then in this case, there was a gay purge and there was a Jewish purge. Anybody left in the government who was left behind. So they were all. So in this case, you could call almost anything the
anything
purge.
200 years later it could have
Right.
been.
And so I think that, but the idea that it was a purgy culture is absolutely true. That their way of rewriting history wasn't to go on the internet. The way of rewriting history wasn't even to rewrite the books. They kept, there were no books. There was no internet. They actually just executed the people, ground them up, and fed them to dogs. That's what they did. And so I think that you just want to make it understand the elemental nature of what Gilead means when they talk about that. In the future, though, I really tried to take it in the spirit in which it was given, which is I had read the book in college. I had read it over and over again. I tried not to take anything as like a rule. I tried to take everything as it's such a point of view story. So the first bit was what it was, which was a recording that they found of someone's experience in Gilead that they don't know if it's true or not true. But we also, the only thing we know about it is these tapes were in no particular order. If you toss them in another way, we may get another story that ends with her arriving at the Waterford house at the end. Who the fuck knows?
Right.
Yeah. So and so that's all we know about that. And then you realize, well, where do you know that? You only know that from these kind of strange. We don't know it from. It's not a fact-based epilogue. It's another person's point of view, and that person we know is full of shit. They're like, we should be more forgiving of these Gileadians. It's like, no. I don't have very many opinions, but one I think is no.
But I can tell now for that.
Yeah, even now I can tell, even looking back. So and so I think that I took everything I could from that, but with that in mind, that this is someone talking who I think is kind of full of shit and has a stupid sense of humor.
Yes.
And even to me feels a little like a big fat lib in a zillion ways that seem dumb, And so it's like, oh, and they're not talking at all about the coolness of tell me more about the cabin. What the hell? I don't care about your fish for dinner.
Fish dinner, exactly.
And so you really want to look at it as what it really is, which it's not the word of God. It's this guy. And I think it is a guy telling you what this woman said. Once again.
And putting her story in an order.
Putting her story, and then he gets the last fucking word. And it's like, no, she should have the last word. But anyway, so I took it also as, I dated a woman in college who went on to be a historian. The way she talked about history was always about, she kind of had a math brain, and she would always say, you got to remember there's variables in here that could be this big or this big, but they might be this, and you have to kind of talk about history as if you know exactly what happened there. Because you need to kind of make conclusions based on it, like you talking about the purge. You have to kind of they mention it, they only mention it once. Should I think about it? Well, it could be really huge and tie in all these ways. And you're absolutely right. All of those things are true. But, I think you are always kind of making decisions half blind, and also getting, and I think that we listened to her story and got a lot more of a feeling of her, because we got to see Elizabeth's face and we got to hear more of the voice and see more of the story, that I think you can kind of, there is a sense that this is all a big fat joke on the historical notes in the first book. That if you made this The Handmaid's Tale and then read those historical notes, they almost kind of fit. They almost fit. I mean, except a few things, but where it was like, wouldn't they know about that? But they almost fit. But it's just very interesting that I think it's. I was looking at that after time of reading it, that guy seems like big fat dope. And he doesn't really seem to have my point of view on the whole thing. And so, and also I was like, June now would be different. She would give herself a break in different ways and not give herself a break in different ways, just based on kind of being of a slightly different time. And so I think those two things kind of color those two sections of the book. You got to just remember who you're talking to.
Right. But I think that's everything that you just explained there is exactly why it's I feel like the series is such a great companion piece to the book, like you were saying, because you can read the book and it ends with, are there any questions? And there is so many questions after that. And I feel like that's what the show did so beautifully, is it answered some of those questions for me. And I like answers. I want some answers. And there's still a ton of ambiguity. The next question
Margaret she wasn't a shy. She told me what to do at the end. She said,
she did.
Everybody said, how could you go past the book? I'm like, oh my God, you get to the end of the book and all you want is more. If you're going to pay me money to write a script, that's the question I'm going to answer, because that's the only one I'd love to see the rest of it. I'm fascinated to see the ceremony. She gets on the fucking van. What happens?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so go on, ask your question. Go.
Exactly. So, actually, just going back to what you said, would you say that this series in general was you, as your own historian and epilogue person, putting June's story together in a way that made sense?
I was hoping it wouldn't be. I
Okay.
was hoping I would have learned the lesson from them, because I think in the book you really do feel like once again another unnamed woman from history
Yeah.
is being having their story told by a man.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening here in the series.
Yep.
So if there's anything I can do, is I can at least say that it's not just the women in the story that are changing. The men in the story are changing,
They
hopefully, too.
are. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I hope that, like maybe I think it'll be a good thing to look at how blind I was and how dumb how many things stand out as really dunderheaded decisions about with things that don't seem tasteful, about how could you do this or that. It seems like appalling now that and even a few years ago might not have seemed appalling.
Fair.
How could you
Yeah.
force McKenna Grace to smoke a cigarette on camera? How could you do that to
Oh
her?
my gosh, I want to
So
see more of her.
her choice. But
Fair, fair, fair.
so I think that you just want to you make the best choices you can at the time,
Yeah.
and you hope that you look back. But there's going to be cringy stuff in everything.
As far as ambiguity goes, there is a scene that Scarlett and I were discussing. I had the opportunity to have some conversations with Scarlett, and there was something that we had kind of misread, and I just want to see where your head was at with it, with June and Luke and their final scene. Um, she was very surprised that they did not even part ways with like a hug or a handshake. And I just hadn't read it that way, that this was like any kind of final scene for them. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying of like there's still a tomorrow for them. This wasn't their final goodbye, and they take different paths in Mayday, and see you when you see
Right.
you.
I think so, and yes, I don't think it was their final goodbye. I think they intended to see each other maybe later that night when he was hungry and
Correct.
came in for dinner. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think this was kind of the last. If you asked June, how'd you leave things with Luke? This is the answer.
Okay.
If you said to June when you invite you and Scarlett invite, and what's your other friend's name? I'm so sorry.
Roxy.
Roxy.
Roxy. Yep.
Invite Aunt June to Thanksgiving in 35 years, and you say, come on, tell
Good
the
Lord.
story. Tell the
Yep.
story.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and then she gets to the end of the story, you're
That's
like, no, no,
her.
no, tell how it ended up with June, with
Yep.
Luke.
With
She goes,
Luke.
well,
That's
in
her
the end,
final
we kind
statement.
of, it was over, the
Yep.
fighting was over, but we didn't have Hannah back.
Yep.
But we knew that, the end of my story as a handmaid
Mhm.
came at this point, and this is where Luke and I were when that story ended, because it's called The Handmaid's Tale. It's not June's Tale. So where she stopped being a handmaid is the Luke. What I feel like is that's another story. That's another part of
Yes.
June's tale, but
Yeah.
it's not the
Not this
Handmaid's Tale.
chapter.
She's
It's
not a
not this
fucking
chapter.
handmaid anymore
Yep.
when she
Yep.
burns that cloak. Yeah.
Perfect. Can we talk about Serena for a second too? Because her ending, I love her ending. I could do a whole video on Serena's arc, and why her ending with
That's
No
all a tribute
Country.
to Yvonne,
Oh, and
her
she's
performance.
incredible. Absolutely incredible. Well, I have a question about what you were thinking. What was the conversation with her backstory with her parents? Because if there's one big question I have with Serena's ending, it is what happened to her mother, who's still in Gilead. I don't know if I misread her parents, or I just have so many more questions about her upbringing and her parents in that season 3 with her mother versus season 6 with her father. And they kind of seem like two people that were never even married.
With those kinds of things, you have so little info
Mhm.
in the book, that
Yeah.
almost nothing. And so, what we're trying to do is fill in a little based on things that we said before and to get our heads around. But when you finally get to tell a story about a character in season 6, you know so much more about them. So I know so much more about her mother than I did before I met her mother. So it's like
Right, right.
certainly I feel like her mom and dad would have been married because I invented the dad to meet the mom. It's
Yep.
like in my head I kind of was exactly how they got together, was exactly kind of her mom was the sour but really verbal
Yep.
version of a very sunny younger version, sunny, serious, super smart, but really so verbally incisive and aggressive, and always always says the right thing and it's always the wrong thing, that's what Serena is, but Serena has so much more charisma. And so the
Yeah.
dad seemed like he was
Okay.
full of charisma,
Yep,
you
yep,
know?
yep, and
And
that was the
so
2 of
but I
them.
kept thinking about her really interestingly, about someone who was very much the product of her parents, where neither one of them had a real marketable skill in terms of her. Neither one of them was someone who would lead a religious revolution. I don't
Right.
think the father
Yep,
wanted, I think he wanted to inspire people, but I don't think he
right.
wanted to lead in this way. I don't think he wanted
Yep,
to have blood on his hands. I don't think,
yep.
but I think the mom, kind of would have enjoyed a lot of blood on her hands, as long as it didn't get in the
Interesting.
house.
Okay, 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 perfect, thank you. I
So
needed a
anyway,
little
there's so
clarity
much
of
there that I felt like Serena was this person plus this person equals this
yes,
person,
and
and
that's what that
she's
was.
so complicated. And some of that had to do with meeting Yvonne Strahovski's parents, uh,
Really?
because Yvonne, and a lot of that, I'm on a show for so long, a lot of your discussions about people and how they are and how they think about themselves have come from the person talking about themselves. So it
Yeah,
isn't like things are based on how Lizzie is, or things are, they're so different in wonderful ways, that you would never, it's why people don't recognize Yvonne on the street, because she doesn't look anything
she's
like
so
Serena,
different.
and because
Yep.
she's herself. So I think that,
Mm,
you bring parts of yourself over time to the part, and we have discussions about that. So when I met Yvonne's parents,
hmm.
they I'm not sure of the exact story, so I don't want to repeat it, but they had a period where they were immigrants, and they ended up waiting till they got to Australia to have her. And she's an only child, and
Yep.
she's this unbelievably gorgeous, athletic, strapping, so full of energy, so smart, and the biggest, like, heart and artistic soul in the universe,
Yeah.
and just hilarious on every. I just have no idea. And also now a mom of three boys.
Does she
Oh my
have 3
god,
boys? Oh my
she's the
gosh.
world's, like, she's a camp counselor, but she looks like Grace Kelly. It's like hilarious.
Seriously.
And she looks like that in real life. And
Mhm.
but meeting her parents, they were so proud of her, and the way that they talked about her and how strong she was, and how because I said to her, I didn't say she an only child. I said, she said she was our only one. We got it perfect the first time, is what her mother said. And so I really felt like that's
Uh,
why it kind of
mhm.
felt that, because Yvonne maybe not be like Serena, but they walk through the world in that body. And a
Yep,
lot of the
yep,
way people react to someone like Yvonne has to do with her physical place in the world. First of all, she's very tall. And
yeah.
so, in terms of being recognizable as a celebrity, Lizzie has Samira is like a peanut. They're like, and so I don't think you get recognized as much, just because I think when Yvonne walks in a room, it's a big person, big
Right,
tall woman.
right, right.
So that happens to Serena too. Also, Yvonne is incredibly impressive as a person, and so is Serena, and all those kind of things.
Yep,
So it's
yep.
not someone who walks in a room and kind of hides. It's someone who walks in a room and
She's gonna
you
command
know,
it.
and so
Yep.
all of those things kind of make you go, well, yeah, they don't have the same political stuff, but the political stuff is relatively new. This is like a
Mhm.
30-year-old woman. She's had political thoughts for 10 years. She's been in that
Right.
body since she's been born. So what does it
Yep.
feel like to be that person, and that commanding and that intelligent, and feel like you're always fucking in the slow class because no
Yes.
one can keep up with you in the class?
Yep.
That, how does that feel? How does that feel to be that person? And I think, to a certain degree, Yvonne is a lot like that. She's incredibly smart. She's a very, very good actor. She has great instincts. And I think being on Handmaids, she felt like she was bringing her A game, and really had
Oh, for sure.
yeah, it was wonderful. But in that final scene, that's, I think, the way to think about it.
Okay.
If I did, is to
Yep.
watch her. It's so complicated to watch her bring that A game. You see so
Yes.
much of the person you've seen all along the way.
Yep.
And I've listened to a lot of reviewers and a lot of people, and one person said that when she says you're all you ever wanted with the baby, the podcaster says, so was that worth it? Was that? And that's really the question, which
That's
is,
the question.
she's
Yep.
saying it's worth it, but she's everything in the scene, and her voice, even, and her face, says it wasn't worth it. So
Right.
that's the beauty of Yvonne Strahovski.
That's oh, she's so good.
Also looking like she's been through hell, and also fantastic.
And still beautiful.
Perfect, like that lip gloss. Where did she get it? It matches
I
her skin
know.
tone perfectly. Oh my god,
Right.
she's like
That
that in
fits well.
person, and
But it
she's
would but that's
delightful.
who
So
she is.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's exactly it. That's perfect. I will not continue on with Serena because I do have a question about Nick too. In the penultimate, and obviously just I guess Nick's ending. Did you have, because to me, I feel like when I go back and rewatch this series, he has been shrouded, just like in the book, kind of shrouded in this mystery of where his loyalties lie and kind of fully fleshing out Nick as a character, like through Offred's perspective. That's kind of the point of the book. And I'm just wondering, at what point did you know what you were going to do with Nick on this
Well,
series?
I don't think there was any big decision about what to do with Nick. I mean, I think we
Yeah.
followed all the characters down to the end and kind of when they were presented with real choices in this situation. I mean, honestly, it was such a violent, awful world. You know, anybody getting through the day was so. We didn't think about. I certainly didn't think about. I need to kill these characters to make it nothing at all,
Right.
ever. Or that these things need to happen for me to feel like the
Okay.
story's over. I
Yep.
felt like the whole point of the book was when it stops, it stops. And I
Hmm.
think here the whole point of the movie, the show, is when it stops, and you get over it because that's what
Yeah.
we had. That's one of the best things about the book is having you spend 25 years getting over it, and that's
Yeah.
the whole point. So
Right.
that's what
Right.
you really want. It's to be kind of like what for
Yes.
25 years,
Yeah.
35, 40
Yep.
years. That's a
Yep.
brilliant. So if we can get people as kind of intrigued about the end of it. So I didn't have a list of things I was trying to check off. But Nick, in terms of a character, I really felt like as soon as he got married and as soon as
Hmm.
she got pregnant,
Okay.
this he had been married to the wonderful to Sid Sweeney,
Yeah.
who was
Yep.
is just a delight and was such a good actress, so terrific on the show. And that face, she's just so wonderful. So he married
Mm.
her, and
Yeah.
she came to this horrible end in a way that he never thought he'd totally blindsided him. And the fact that he got married again, my feeling about him was the guy that June fell in love with would never, ever leave his wife and his pregnant wife, ever,
Okay.
because
Okay.
he made the choice when he
Hmm.
said, "Okay, we're going to get married," and okay, there was obviously an agreement that they would try to have children. They tried to have
Yep.
children, and they're. I think that he, as you kind of just say to yourself, "Okay, well, if it at some point I can't if I can't abandon them." I
Yeah.
mean, so and June would hate me if I did. That was always my
Yes.
feeling is that
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
man that he kind of the reason he makes this choice is because he can't even admit to June that he wants to take her away to Paris just to cover his own ass. There's this such a great loving moral core in him, and that's all she
Hmm.
sees, and she sees it more clearly than anybody else. And
Yep.
she brings it to the surface to the point where once he throws in his lot with this woman, and every time she says, "You have to choose me, this is your son," she's exactly right. June would
Yeah.
say the same thing. So I just
Right.
feel like he
Right.
really made that choice, and he was hoping it would never, ever, 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 ever come to bear. In fact, he thought, "Oh, I can just completely keep doing what I'm doing," you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but it didn't. And I don't think, I think in the end, everything around them was so violent, it ended up being a violent end. But I just think
Yep.
the choice of Gilead was not a big choice. I felt like he had a moral guy like him and a moral,
Yep.
the kind of gentle nobility and dutifulness of Nick
Uh-huh. Beautiful.
that you
Yeah.
love, that makes
Yep.
him a great person for a cult to recruit.
Yep. Yep.
That you
Yep.
love about him makes him,
Right.
for me, the man that you fall in love with, the man that June saw would never, ever, he knows what he's doing now. He has a
Yes.
child that he doesn't
Yep.
see. He knows what he's doing. I tear up every time I think about the poor guy, how torn he is by
Right.
feeling like all day long you work at the butcher and then you come home and you have the cutest little cow.
Like I could exactly. You see that struggle with him right up until the end, and that his very last choice is that same thing. But it did kind of throw me to hear the way in which he said the winning side. Was that him trying to kind of codify his own decisions as he got on the plane?
Well, it's as with everything the actors do, it's got like lots of levels, and I'll tell you what I saw in there and what I was
Yeah.
thinking about when I was writing it. But the
Mhm.
whole point is you kind of want that. Then I sit down in the editing room. I was like, "Ooh, I never thought it would feel like that." My sense was he was
Cool.
just saying it in front of the other commanders.
Yeah.
He's on the
Yep. Yep.
team
Yep.
and he's
Yep.
going to
This is
express
just
that
part
he's
of
on
the
this. Okay. That was my
gotcha.
sense of writing it. They added
Okay.
all this other fantastic
And
stuff
then it
by
comes
slightly
that's so
mixing the sound
interesting.
down and
Mhm.
slightly having no one else look. So
Yep. Yep.
Josh
Yep.
is a great actor, so he didn't look.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
is he not hearing? Wouldn't he
Right,
hear from that?
right, right,
So there's that
right.
many levels of things that I don't write in
Oh, that's
that
really
kind of,
cool.
and also just come out of your own social gut. So, but
Yep.
my sense, the reason I thought that line was important, he said, "I'm glad you decided to choose the winners."
Yes.
Right? He didn't say the right side.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't say my side. He didn't
Uh-huh.
say us.
Yep. Yep.
He chose the winning side, which is the important thing because
That's
the
okay.
winning means safe, and
Safe. Yeah.
safe is what a father with a child on the way has to be.
Is trying to do.
And
There
so
you go.
you chose the safe side. Where are we going? We're getting the hell out of here. This is the safe side. He made no qualitative judgments, and that was on purpose. And my sense was that's how he thinks about it. And don't extrapolate. He doesn't think anything more of them. He doesn't think
Yep.
they're
Yep.
good. He doesn't think they're
Yep.
right. He doesn't think they're nice. He doesn't
Yep.
think they smell good. He doesn't think they dress well. He
And he
doesn't think
doesn't.
Josh Charles was good in Dead Poets Society. They don't think anything. But they do. He does know that they're winning, and he's
Yeah.
not wrong. They do.
Right.
I mean, in the end, they don't.
Yeah.
They have a ceasefire and they win a battle, but certainly the people with the nuclear bombs are winning. So
We're
anyway,
winning.
I felt like once again, Nick, as much as possible, I feel like with the people in that state, he has a very honest heart and he likes to be honest, which is the thing that June taught him how incredibly intimate and sexy it is to be honest with someone,
Yep.
even
Yep. Yep.
slightly,
Love it. Yep.
that he's kind of addicted to it. So
Okay.
he's intimate with Lawrence
Yeah.
because intimacy suddenly is fun,
Is
he needs it. So she taught
yeah.
him how to be intimate. She disappeared, and so he's intimate with Lawrence, but he also is
Wow.
intimate with Rose. And how can he not
Yeah.
be? How
Yep.
does I mean June would be proud of him. He's exactly
Correct.
so
Yeah.
that's the way that I feel. Once June cracked the egg,
Yeah.
it runs everywhere. And one of the
Yep.
things is
Yep.
he can't, even if he doesn't love Eden,
Yeah.
he can't be mean to her, like face to
Right.
face,
Right.
because
Right.
he has his heart is turned on by June, and it's not going to turn off.
And you can't
So,
turn it off. Yeah.
and it would have been a lot smarter to be mean to Eden and
Right.
all those kind of things.
Right.
So I think
Right.
Nick is in that sense, the sense of which side he chooses. I think he's thinking about, in a lot of ways, not all the ways, but in a lot of ways, he's being the person June would expect him to be. If
Yeah.
June wasn't there and it didn't have anything to do with Mayday and he was just getting on a plane, it
Right.
wouldn't matter. And any
Right.
plane you get on in Gilead, especially if you read the book, Handmaids, are
Yeah.
about the any plane's going to fucking blow up. They're going to throw
Right.
you off the roof. Any Thursday you get stabbed in the
Yep.
eye. So the fact that it happened on that day, and that was
Yep.
like, how many chances were there for Nick to die that day already with
Yes.
bombs and
Seriously.
stuff?
Yep.
So
Fair enough. Perfect. Thank you for explaining that because that'll help me a lot when I go back to look at Nick's character. I have taken up a ton of your time and I will let you go, but I have one final statement. It's a kind of a question. It's okay if you don't want to box yourself into an answer quite yet. I'm so excited for the Testaments and I am going to go back. We've already read it once and I'm very much looking forward to the series, mostly because
don't tell me how it turns out.
I'll keep that spoiler to myself. You haven't said a lot about it, but I've seen some interviews where you have spoken a little bit about it. And the one line that you have said is the one line that has really kind of stayed with me. It's not even a specific line, it's kind of a feeling from the Testaments. When Agnes is talking about, I think she's talking about her current handmaid, and she just looks like she has no energy. And what you've been saying about the Testaments, that there's a lot of energy. And I'm very excited for that tonal shift, which I feel like is going to make it feel like an entirely different story, even as it's the next chapter of this story that we're watching. But one final question that I have with the Testaments and with everything moving forward, with what we've seen in The Handmaid's Tale. Now that we know that this is like June's story, and I have a little bit more clarity of all the times in which you said we're just seeing June's story and things in which June would be privy to. In season 5, is she just imagining and hoping and dreaming of Hannah writing her name, or is that something that was meant to be showing us that Hannah does still remember who she is?
Well, I have two answers for you. The first answer is the intention, and when we put it in, the intention was always Hannah's writing her name down. She remembers that for some reason, partially because she didn't learn any more writing. So you kind of
Fair.
remember the
Yeah,
one you
no,
knew.
totally.
And we are trying to make that necessarily part of her world now. We may not be referring to it, but
Yeah,
that is supposed to be a real thing that happened in the past that
gotcha.
hopefully, if I do my job well, and
You will.
I don't know if I will or I'll ever get there. The idea, is the hard part of this is, you're planting seeds and watering them and watching them grow
Yeah.
and tending them in a car that's at the Indianapolis 500.
Right.
And you're also painting the car while you're doing it, while you're doing the race, and you're building another car. And at some point,
Yep.
you have to change from one car to another without slowing down. So
That's a
all of
lot.
that
You got a lot
careful
on your
tending
plate.
work is kind of done on the fly. So to be very
Okay.
honest, I think she was writing it. I think she saved that amongst other pieces of paper. And I don't know if at
Mhm.
some point she
Mhm.
lost it and it got taken away, but she has other pieces of writing that she's been saving. And I think at some
Okay.
point in the Testaments, we will also see that. So what she was
Cool.
doing there, which is writing, remembering she had that education a bit before. That certainly is there, and that identity is there. The interesting thing is that in the Testaments, if you kind of play it out, Tabitha really addresses what she'd remember every single beat of what happened with
Okay.
June in a way that would just make her a terrifying memory that she'd want to forget. So
Fascinating.
yeah.
Oh, I can't wait.
To answer the energy question, the show
Mhm.
just as you watch it more and more, the young actors have such energy, and also the Handmaid's Tale is about taking these women full of energy and
And breaking them, yeah.
breaking them, and you
Yep.
meet them, and their energy is all bound up, and you can't break
Yep.
them, but they
Yep.
start as broken as they're going to be. This is the opposite. You start with them. It's about taking these girls and telling them they're special, and they're so energetic, and then you're saying
And just
it's going to
wash
end
them down.
right now.
Yeah.
Like now you
Yep.
know
Yep.
and so I
This
think
is
that's the feeling, is that it's all of every John Hughes movie together taking place in one evening, emotionally, that they want
Yep.
them to go
Yep.
through all of their adolescence in like 4 seconds, and
It
then literally get
right, and then
married
they're
and
just
start
gonna
having
go off
children.
and be married and oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
but
Oh,
also
that'd be
not just
great.
be married, you're going to be a wife, and you're going to run a
Mhm.
house, and you have a big huge responsibility to Gilead. If you screw up, it can hurt your husband's career. The stakes are
Yeah.
huge, and also there's all these weird sexual things that are coming in after, especially
Yeah.
they've messed you up as much as they can, in addition to it
Right,
being incredibly
right.
messed up. So
Yeah.
I think it's those girls, all that fabulous energy of a 14, 15-year-old girl, and especially those friendships, that tribalness. You really
Yeah.
feel like, oh my God, where's all that energy going to go? And
Right.
fortunately, even though the ants don't give them an outlet, and neither does Gilead, Mayday
Yeah.
does.
Ha.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna be excellent. I'm very excited. Thank you so much for your time. I will stop peppering you with more of my random thoughts and continue on because I could do this all day. Thank you for taking some time out of the day to come and talk to me. I am very, very excited for the Testaments, but more importantly, I am just so impressed with The Handmaid's Tale. Thank you for everything you did to bringing this book to the screen the way you did.
I literally did my best, and it was the biggest group effort you could possibly hilariously imagine. I mean,
It's perfect.
it's like all the way from the guy doing the catering to the guy painting the walls to Lizzie's person. It's just up and down. Everybody knew the story and wants to tell the same story, so it gets fun when it's like that.
It's perfect. Is there one final thing that you can leave us with? If there's anything in the 6 seasons that you put in or that was put in that you really liked, that was like some kind of tiny detail that you went unnoticed as far as you know? Is there something that was
I, I,
in there?
I'm sure there are a bunch. I can't think of
Yeah.
one off the top of
Fair
my
enough,
head,
fair enough.
but I did want to tell you one thing, is that the one thing I missed from the book, the
Mm,
one thing I didn't put in the
okay.
show, was that
Yeah.
little, remember she had a little pillow that had the word faith on it
Yes, yeah.
in her room, and we
Yep.
didn't. I think
You
it
wanted
might
it.
have shown up in some shots, but I don't think we ever
It never
did
made it
it,
into the
because
final.
it felt like that Serena would never make that mistake in her writing. And she runs a tight ship.
Fair,
She's not going to
fair.
have, yeah,
No, I
she
didn't
wouldn't
even
make
think
that,
about that,
because
but
it would
she
have
would
meant
know.
so much. Like, she lives in a little bit of a
Yeah.
saucy house. It meant,
Right.
but I never had that, and I was thought the other day, I was thinking back, looking at my
Hmm.
copy of The Handmaid's Tale, which is somewhere. My real copy, the one that I use
Yeah, do you have a
for
real
work.
copy around? That's so cool.
See, it's so not around. It's being used somewhere.
It's
This is
always
the
being used. I totally
it's
get that.
always
Oh my
being used.
gosh, look at it. That's so special.
This is the Testaments, the
Oh,
real
that's oh, I know.
Testaments that I bought, and the one that I have
I
all my
have a
notes
book
in.
that looks just
Yeah,
like that, all marked up. Oh, that's
exactly. Yeah.
special too. Oh my gosh.
Well, so yeah, all those funny things I have, but so I would say that's the one thing off the top of my head I can think of.
The,
But
the detail that didn't make it in, I love it. I
so
love it.
please, thank you so much, and
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Oh,
Please
please,
send my
yes,
best to Roxy and Scarlett.
I will certainly. Thank you so much.
Take
Appreciate it.
care.
We'll talk to you next time. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and thank you again, Bruce, for giving me answers around my incoherent questions and long preamble statements. I tried to warn him in the beginning that I had scripted questions, but I probably wasn't going to use them because I hate trying to read from a script. It was going to feel too scripted, and I just wanted it to feel like a conversation. And he goes, Marjorie, I know how you talk. So that was relieving because that is how I talk. And I am grateful that he was able to answer around how I talk. All right, so a couple things of housekeeping moving forward. I am finally going to get that episode out to you very, very shortly. A lot of work stuff going on, a lot of kid stuff going on, and we are through that. I just didn't want to rush this episode. So thank you for your patience. I will have a final episode recap coming out, and then we will talk all about what we're going to do after that. I have a lot of different ideas and I want to hear what you want to see as well. So stay tuned and I'll see you back here very shortly.